So, double parsha, Chukat, Balak. We're reading a lot of stories to tell us. As you know, I'm focusing on haftaras this year. This is kind of what I've been doing, and once I get stuck in a rut, I just get stuck in a rut. So, I was reading the haftarah this week, and you know what popped into my mind? A movie popped in my mind. It doesn't happen all the time. I don't watch a lot of movies, but when I do, sometimes they stick in my mind. So a movie that surfaced to my mind is called Second-Hand Lions. Anybody seen that one? Okay, some of you guys have seen it, and you love it, and you say it's a comedy, okay? Those of you who have not seen it, I'll give you just the gist of it. It's a comedy about a boy who comes to live with his two crazy and eccentric uncles on a farm in Texas. The uncles, they have seen much in life. They served in the French Legion in World War I. They have stories galore. And apparently, on top of it all, they're very rich. Now, everyone in Texas is after their fortune. And at one point in the movie, they buy a second-hand lion for hunting practice. You know, back in the day when there was no PETA or anything like that. They buy a second-hand lion for hunting practice. And it turns out that it's an old lioness. Actually quite tame and not spry enough and cunning enough to recreate the thrill of the hunt in Africa. A disappointment for them. So she's old, and the boy and the lioness become close. But the beast eventually escapes and claims a nearby cornfield as her new jungle. As you can see, it's a comedy. It just keeps on coming. It really is a wild and quite comical movie full of all kinds of unexpected turns and twists. And so this lioness, she ultimately defends the boy, whom she sees as her own little cub. And she does that with her life at the very crucial point of the movie. And even in her old age, she lives out her life as a true lioness. And in many ways, so do the untamed and crazy uncles as well. So in our reading, you will understand why I'm bringing this out. In our reading the prophets this week, the verses that kind of spoke to me that I was reading, I'll back you guys up a little bit into Micah chapter 5. We encounter some very poetic verses that mention lions and mention their prowess. This is what Micah 5:8 says. The remnant of Jacob will be among the nations, among many peoples, like a lion among the forest animals, like a young lion among flocks of sheep, which if he passes through, he tramples and tears, and there's none to rescue. Now, Micah uses this poetic imagery, and he describes the remnant of Israel. This is Sharit Israel. This is just a small part. And curiously, very curiously, they are depicted as young lions, as kefirim in Hebrew it says. And even after all and the travail and the defeat that they have been through, because I want you to understand, Micah is writing these prophetic words in the hindsight of the destruction of the Assyria. People have been taken captive. That's why he's speaking to the remnant, the ones that still are standing. He says, even as a remnant, they that are survived this terrible tragedy are depicted as areh, as an apex predator by the prophet, a lion. Now, this is not an all typical. Why I say this is strange, this is unusual, because most people do not associate Israel with lions. And for good reason. For a good reason, I have to say. Israel, if you look through the words of the prophets, if you just go through all the different inspired words and the passages that have been given to us, often Israel is depicted as domesticated animals, not as predators. Because Israel does not usually behave in predatory ways, especially if it is a minority, a remnant, like we're reading about here. And yet, that is the language that the prophet chooses. Very strange, very unusual twist. So I wondered why. All week long, I just wondered why. And the only way I can make sense of these words, this poetic language, is along the lines of the Second-Hand Lions movie. And those of you who've seen the movie will probably appreciate the things that I say a lot more. Those of you who haven't, watch it on Sunday. I'm sure it's on Netflix or Amazon or somewhere out there. Whatever the reality that one can perceive from this interesting, peculiar film, the main characters of the movie, they're very simple on the surface. But below the surface, if you look at them, they're bigger than life. On the inside, they are just characters of huge proportions. And so on the outside, when you watch this movie, it's about two crabby old men who are on the inside are completely something else. And so bringing a lion into the mix reveals something else, something very symbolic in this movie that's way beyond the surface. And so as I thought about the messages that the prophet could possibly portray to us, what can these words, this poetry from thousands of years ago say to us today? I wondered and reflected both on the words of the prophet and the imagery that kept coming up in my mind about the movie. And these are the lessons that I wanted to share with you that I think can speak into our lives today. The first one is this: remember God's promises no matter where you are. You see, in this story in Micah, Israel is defeated. Yet the prophet speaks of them in very optimistic terms. The words are spoken to the remnant, to the ones who are left behind, to the ones that have survived the tragedy. Yet he speaks in very optimistic terms. Why? The only answer I can come up with is because if you belong to God, then the circumstances that you experience, they may be dismal, but they can change. And they can be, and often are, temporary. What is permanent and what is much more important is our connection to God and to his promises most. So we should do our best to hold on to the promises and to stay faithful to see them come true. We have to persevere and live through the adversity of life. No matter where we are, we have to remember and hold on to those promises. So even a defeated and a crushed remnant cannot abandon hope. For just as Hashem brought about people out of childlessness, taking Abraham and Sarah, in a similar way, he can do mighty things through very little, just through the remnant. What Abraham had, all that Abraham had for a while, was a promise. And he saw that promise become reality as he lived as a stranger, an alien, a minority among the nations. That is what these verses in Micah are saying. You, Israel, you remnant, are among the nations, but you are a lion. So Israel repeats this path yet again and again and again. Whether we're talking about the life of Abraham or later on, this path repeats. So that's why I say remember God's promises no matter where you may find yourself. The second point is this: remain true to who you are no matter the circumstances. You see, I find the fact that the prophet compared the remnant of Israel to lions that trample absolutely remarkable. I don't usually think of people who have been defeated as trampling anybody or anything. Yet that's the words he uses. So my guess is that it has much to do with who they were on the inside, not what actually, physically, truly happened to Israel. The capture by the Assyrians did not change who they were. No matter where they lived, they had the gifts that they had. They had the promises. The potential was still deep within them. Their behavior, simply being who they were, threatened everyone around them. a mere fact of life. You are who you are, and nothing can change that. The promises you have, the things that you cling to, the things that are inside you cannot be changed. And that may be inconvenient for people. If you were to encounter a lion, if I was to encounter a lion in the wild today, I wouldn't be wondering if it's old or young, hungry, or have eaten recently. I would run as fast as I could because, well, my friends, lions do what lions do. And I know that, and this is what I mean. Remain true to who you are no matter the circumstances, because while maybe you look defeated on the outside, on the inside, that's what Hashem sees, lions. So in the movie, people try to steal the old man's money. They try to go after these old men. And the old lioness, she ultimately defends the boy whom she sees as her cub with her life, as I told you. And she continues being who she is, even in her old age. And the movie, this movie, Secondhand Lions, ends with the boy, after the old man had died, remarking to someone who is asking about his uncles. The uncles left them their entire fortune, by the way. So the person says, did these people really exist? Not really believing. And he answers to them, no, they really lived. So do as lions do, is what I'm trying to say. Remember who you are. Be yourself despite whatever circumstances you find yourself, because your destiny is tied to the Most High. Remain who you truly are, no matter the circumstances. Shabbat Shalom.